morning, everybody. You're listening to the Arwen Lewis Show. Today, my very special guest is musician and songwriter Katie Cole. You can find her on Instagram at Katie Cole Official, on her website at katiecoleofficial.com. We took you out to break with her song River Flow, and we brought you back in with her song Short Story Long. And we're here today talking about her extensive career as a musician and songwriter. And Katie, thanks for being on the show. And for those of you who haven't heard her voice yet, here she is.
G'day, crikey.
From Melbourne.
From Melbourne, you got it. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. We just had a nice little conversation about your work as a touring musician, accompanying others and opening up for some great artists like Kris Kristofferson and being in the band for the Smashing Pumpkins. But let's dive in to talk about your music and your experience as a songwriter. Your latest release is Rivers and Roads, and we're going to feature your song Young and Stupid at the end of the show this afternoon or this morning. And anyway, Katie, when did you start writing songs and what inspired you to start writing?
I guess that's a tough one because I'm sure I was sort of writing songs before I knew I was writing songs because I grew up in such a musical family that I'm sure a lot of things that were happening, I was very unaware that they were unique experiences to basically me and my sister. But I mean, she sang and I sang, and I remember we made up songs that were terrible when we were kids. And I was the background vocalist. She was the lead vocal. She was older than me. She's the lead vocalist, and I'm the background vocalist. So I'd always like make up stuff. But I think what that taught me as a young, again, terrible songwriter at the time, but a young little kid was that I could then hear harmonies. I could hear where a note pressed against a melody, how that affected the way that things felt in the song. And I know that stuff started to go in. I just didn't think of it as a conscious sort of like, I'm learning how to write songs. But I started to sort of noodle and write songs. And I think I would have been maybe, I think probably 18. I
Okay.
was young when I started to actually try and record songs, and I had like a really old mini disc recorder, which is like, it's like a step above DAT. It's like an old little, like it looks like a little square doodad, and it had 4 tracks on it, and basically you could bounce them down. So basically you could endlessly bounce down things, but it was like basically almost the equivalent of what the Beatles at the time would have had access to in Abbey Road. They only had a few channels, and they just kind of go left and right and bounce things down and loop stuff. And but I had that ability, as like I knew that's what I had, so that's what I had to work with. And I filled up, 10 or so discs of like maybe 10 songs each. I just kept going and going and going. And I don't really think you're a songwriter. Well, in my opinion, I don't really think you're an active songwriter until you've written, a few hundred songs. I think that's when you can kind of go, I know what I'm doing. I know when it's right. I know when it's wrong. I know when it's unfinished. I know when it couldn't be better.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know why. I know how it makes me feel. And I know how to do that again.
Yeah.
It just takes a long time. And some people fall into it literally. There are artists that start young, write their first few songs, and those are giant hits, like giant hits. But I do think of myself as a songwriter first, and I think of myself as an artist because I'm a songwriter, because I need an outlet for the things that I want to say. Um, I don't know. I think it became something of an interest to me when I started to want to know, some of these artists that I was listening to, whether it was, you know, the Beatles or Eurythmics or Sheryl Crow or Aretha or whoever I was listening to. I just wanted to know who wrote the songs as well. Like I loved this, I love this vocal, I love this whatever, but I started to get into the, okay, why do I love it? Because the song, okay, who wrote the song? What else have they written? And I started to connect dots. And obviously, I brought up Carole King earlier just because, I mean, people like Aretha were the best interpreters of songs. Like, so all these people wrote songs and Aretha would sing them, and you'd be like, it's a brand new song. She just brought her own element to it. And so to be a great artist does not mean that you have to have written the song. It means you know how to use the instrument that you've got and interpret well. And I think she was definitely one of the best at it. But I
Oh, that's
just
a
really
good
wanted to
point.
know what I loved about songs. Like I couldn't work it out. And until you sort of write songs and sort of work it out, then you go, okay, this is why I love it. It's like an endless sort of investigation of humankind and human emotion.
Yeah, and I feel like or I know that that's a tradition of folk music in the beginning, like in Greenwich Village. I feel like that's what people were doing. They were sharing all their ideas and conversing, and it creates this community. And I, and I'm the same way. I really love hearing different people's interpretations of songs because you get to know that person on a different level, and you get to know the song on a different level, and then it just opens or it widens your musical vocabulary too by experiencing that. And so it sounds like you were kind of just starting to produce yourself too as a songwriter
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
And have you self-produced anything, or do you prefer to work with a producer and have
N-
somebody else's opinion?
No, it's not really my expertise. I have the patience to get the song out in the basic form, structure, and sonic outlet. Like I can kind of get it together, like to know that this is the part I like. This is basically the drum. I'm more interested in like the parts, and rather than it being the perfect sum of the parts, it's more like, do I like this drum pattern? Do I like this guitar line? Are these background vocals kind of in the ballpark of where they need to be? Rather than it being, because I think those are the things that sort of make up the song and why I'm interested in the song. The production of things can only improve upon what's already there, as
Mhm.
in like the quality, the tone, the musicianship of another guitarist, a studio guitarist coming in to basically better the part that I've got. That's infinitely better. You know, that's always the thing. I'm interested in that part of things. But if I was to be trying to write the song and having these people around at the same time, or to be like, here I've just got it on acoustic, and to not have thought through like those other parts, I just can't do that. I have to know the building blocks of what I've got of the song. I mean, it's a little bit different when you've got a scale back song that's only got, you know, two or three instruments or a couple of guitars and a vocal. That's
Mhm.
like, okay, I can ballpark that and be like, that's cool. That's my demo, my work tape is good enough. Then I
Mhm.
can, you know, sort of flush that out in the studio. But a bigger song with a bigger production, I got to know that what I'm doing is going to work, rather than getting into the studio. You've paid all these people, you know, got the studio, and then it's just like, yeah, it's not great. You know, like,
And like you don't always want to, it sounds like you don't want to just give them the reins and just say, okay, well, play whatever you hear. Like you'd prefer to really have an outline for the parts that they're going to do and then just kind of tell
yes,
them to do
and
that better.
well, it's an outline though, and like I just want to have
Yeah.
written or drawn the sketch of like, here is like here's the basic part. Yes, have a go at basically reinventing this. And how do you hear that? Do you hear something else? You know,
Mhm.
I want to know that here's my part, and I know that this will basically work.
Right.
This basically is a core element of the song, well, of the song in the way that I hear it.
Right.
And anything else on top of that is basically like going for, you know, the next level above that, going, what, how else does it improve the song, rather than going, let's do something completely different, because if you change that, you know, core element, then that might affect this other thing that's basically balancing off that. And I don't know, I think pre-production, I've learned, like working with Howard, is a really big deal. um it makes you go, I know we're going to get something even better than this. I know it. It's here is the proof. We've already done all the work to flush out this demo. It's not just like, hey, have at it. Because yes, musicians will play something great, but it may not be right.
Yeah, and especially for your vision. And I think it's really amazing that you have this strong vision and ability to outline things that way. For me, I've like when I've recorded, I'm like, okay, well then I know this person plays a certain way, so I'm just gonna let them do that. And it ends up being, I don't know, like kind of experimental, which I really
Yeah.
enjoy, but it doesn't end up sounding the way your records sound, like polished and complete. And
It sometimes it can work though. Like
yeah,
if a song is reliant upon a musician to bring an element of unknown, or if you don't know exactly what it needs, but it needs something in this sort of vein, is I think referencing songs and referencing tones and just the elements of songs can be really helpful, so that when you do go into the studio, like often it'll be Howard and myself, and we'll sit down and we'll have a couple of reference songs to play to the musicians. So we play them the references. Here's this song by this artist. Here's this song by this artist. Now here is this song. And it's not just like, let's do exactly copy paste of this. It's like, you know, sort of garnering some of the elements of what makes the essence of that song that way and applying it to this song with these parts and these things. So I guess it's like, you know, it's like casting actors in a role. It's like going, you need to now interpret this particular part and play it in this way. And I think
right.
that takes patience to know that you've got the right people in the room that will actually know how to do that. But I think it's worth the effort putting in the work before you go into the studio, because the work that you do in the studio shouldn't be it shouldn't be stressful. It should be hard work, but it shouldn't be like, are we even getting this? It shouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't think it should be that. It should just be like, we know we're going to get this. Is it the best possible version of this?
totally. And that's the economically professional way to do it too, for sure. And so anyway, we're going to hear an example of that now. We're going to take you out to break with Katie Cole's song Hands Tied, one of my favorites. And you're listening to Arwen Lewis on the Arwen Lewis radio show. My very special guest is musician, songwriter Katie Cole. And you can find out more about her at katiecoleofficial.com and on Instagram at Katie Cole, on Spotify and other platforms under Katie Cole. Please enjoy Hands Tied.